All right. So this is going to be the second round of developing Waveflow. I'm sorry, Wavefold. I was thinking of another application. So since the first stream and now, one of the major things I did was going ahead and repointing Claude to the dev work tree, because before, what happens is when you create a new Claude project, I realized that it creates a work tree, which is not a problem when you're working alone, or potentially in a team when you're working in an isolated environment. But in this case, it makes it easier to reflect the changes in Xcode, so that way we can go ahead and take a look alongside the working tree diffs. And the second thing I did was, just before I switched, I went ahead and expanded the types that were inside of that are inside of Xcode, because what happens is on the simulator, let me go ahead and bring this up there. On the simulator, the UI, as you can see, is not bad, but it's also highly incomplete. So like in this case, it's like allergies is quite basic. It's just a name, but there's obviously more allergy information. Medications is not bad. Name is okay. Dosage, and then you have frequency. This one I wasn't happy with. I want to expand it because there's so much more information when it comes to frequency. When it comes to conditions, same same considerations as allergies. There's more to here. Notes is okay. Emergency notes is okay for now. I feel like this could be improved, but honestly, this is okay. Blood type, I'm happy with. But yeah, this is currently where we're at right now. So let's go ahead and see what changes were done. So let's go ahead and see what changes are done. I really hate how. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and see what changes are being done in here. Okay. So as you can see, it's like add medication sheets. So everything has been expanded out. I think it's quite a bit to go ahead and go over. We can go ahead and like take a look at the application running. And again, this code's going to be open source. I'm just treating this channel like a general workshop, just so while I'm making stuff, it's like people can go ahead and just like view along, and I can view along as well. It's as much a historical reference for me to see, what was made, as well as how I'm evolving with these tools. And, people can come here and see how I'm using the workflow, just my thinking. And also, if they want to go ahead and try doing it on their own, either by forking the repository when it's done, or potentially just using Claude or Codex in your own projects as well. It's like you can go ahead and just see at least how it's interacting here. So let's go ahead and see what we got. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this isn't bad. I don't know. It's been a long time. I mean, I do have allergies, I guess, like pollen. Okay, mild, moderate, severe. Okay, so moderate. Once upon a time, I used to have a reaction. I think this is something that needs to be, this should be like a list, because you can have multiple reactions. Like, for example, it's like sneezing, or you could potentially have like wheezing, hard of breathing. So as you can see, this should be a list. So that'll be the first thing. So let's go ahead and head to Claude, and let's see, some notes on allergies. Let's see, is that thing called? Reactions. I'm trying to figure out how these hotkeys work. Right now it keeps putting an input. I'm not sure if it's a Mac OS thing or I'm just really bad at this. I solve problems, I don't make YouTube videos. So let's see. The reactions. Yeah, actually, the reaction text field should be a list of reactions for an allergy to pollen may have wheezing, sneezing, and hard of breathing, or whatever that's called. It's been a while since I've done that. Okay, let's go ahead and head back and see what we got. So severity is good. Active onset date. I think onset date is fine. So let's go ahead and do pollen. Let's just say sneezing for now. And yeah, let's go ahead and say this is because this is active. And let's go ahead and do that. Pollen, sneezing. Okay, what if I was to... Okay, perfect. I can't modify it. Oh, don't want to delete that yet. Let's go ahead and have an inactive one. Let's see. Actually, it makes me now realize, hang on, let's go back to Claude. For the, actually here. Another thing is that allergic reactions can be, what's the term? They can be inactive. For instance, I don't wheeze anymore with pollen. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go ahead and head back and see. Okay, let's go ahead and see here. Let's go ahead and mix something up. Let's say olives. And let's say once upon a time I was anaphylactic. Let's see. Bad coughing. But it's not active anymore. Anaphylactic. Okay, that inactive. I don't know. I feel like this can be made more prominent. Yeah, that can be made more prominent. So let's see. The inactive pill can be made more prominent. Okay, I think that's really all there was to allergies. Actually, here, let me do this. Let me go ahead and just see, let's go ahead and see what these other ones look like. So mild is green, and then we're going to have a moderate, severe. Let's see what severe looks like. Call that B. Severe. Okay, yeah, that coloring isn't so bad. Let me see. Okay, delete behavior works. I'm debating if deletion should be so frictionless. Maybe, I'm debating if I want deletion to be so frictionless. So let's go ahead and probably make it a little bit friction. Add a little bit of friction. For the swipe to delete, can we add a modal? No, can we add an alert to make sure the user is going to delete that allergy? We don't have, yeah. Let's state the name of the allergy as well. Okay, so I think that's all there really was to that. Let's go ahead and take a look at, let me go ahead and clean up these. Well, let me keep, okay, yeah, let me go ahead and, so let's go ahead and, yeah, let me just go ahead and remove everything and just leave pollen. Let's go take a look at medications. Invalid number of items. Okay. So this is something to take a look at. So what I'm going to do is what ended up happening is Swift data had multiple validation errors. So let me go ahead and let me see if we also got this error. Swift data. So it did not appear. So what ended up happening was, interestingly enough, the application crashed. And let's go ahead and take a look at, let's go ahead and switch over to Claude. It was a Swift data error. And in particular, it's like there was a duplicate, funny enough, an invalid item count as well. So, just some of the nuances when working with artificial intelligence. It can do a lot, but it's also something that, as is being shown, just have to be very careful about. It requires a lot of scrutiny. And, it's like I can see why people are skeptical of this because it does a lot of good things. Now, to be fair, oh, I'm on Opus. I don't know if I wanted to be on Opus, but this code base was also made using Sonnet. I don't know if I want to use Opus though, but we'll go ahead and try Opus out. To for reference, like these are the models right here. Opus 4.7. I'm on the 1 million token count. I actually don't want to do that. The reason why is because I do use Opus for one of my other projects, so okay. Okay, inverse relationships are missing. Okay. All right, here we go. Now we can go ahead and track our diffs. Let it run its magic. Okay, so data, allergy reaction. I guess that's fine. I was going to call it allergic. I was thinking of calling it allergic reaction, but honestly, there's no point in being picky. Yeah, this is fine right here, actually. Okay, let's go ahead and see. So schema, went ahead and added allergy reaction. Okay, reaction. So a relationship delete rule cascade, that makes sense. Because if the allergy is gone, then the reactions should be gone. Okay, and then it's a list of allergic reactions. Perfect. Okay, reactions. This is what I was thinking of before. It's going to create a list of allergy reactions. It's fine. Allergy relationships. Okay, went ahead and created these inverse relationships under the emergency profile. Okay, yeah, this is okay. We'll see how this runs. Medication has an emergency profile, and then there's our allergic reaction. Yeah, what I'll do is when this is done, I'm going to go ahead and switch off of Opus and go to Sonnet because I know Opus, again, like I said, is being used for another project, and I just don't want to. I don't want to swamp the context with a project that's not even related to what I'm working on. And that project is an actual commercial project that I'm doing, so I need the higher intelligence off of this, the higher capability to be more exact about it. So, but no, it's not so bad. When you're working with AI, even when you're using Opus, it's not perfect, but it is a lot. It doesn't make these smaller mistakes, but at the same time, um, when it comes to inverse relationships, Swift data is really good. it's so much better than core data, but these inverse relationships can be difficult to reason about. But once the data models are stabilized, you don't think about it anymore. And this only happens when you have relationships. If they're standalone entities, they're very easy to work with. Very easy to work with. So here's all of our types in the schema. Something that I'll do further down the line is probably put these inside of a like a version schema. So like a schema v1. So that'll come towards the end though. No point in being so nuanced about it right now. Okay, what do we got here now? Update profile form. Okay, okay. All right, here we go. That's an interesting way of having it. So the way, when I used to type this all by hand, the way it worked is I agreed that environment is on top, and then funny enough, private state variables would go underneath environment, and then it'll be private variables on top of properties. But no, it's interesting. This is actually not so bad. I actually like this setup a lot better. Now that I'm seeing this set that up, I actually like that. Okay, details, add reaction. Okay, Xcode build, go ahead. Yeah, so inverse relationships. So yeah, that's kind of the thing with Swift data. You know, it's like inverse relationships are one, and mutating existing models too. I think I think if I remember correctly, if you were to use if you create standalone entities, you don't have to worry about Swift data. So if you expand your schema horizontally, then you don't have to worry. But as soon as you have vertical expansion, such as like adding a new property, that's where you have to be more careful. Optional properties you can add at will, but once you have a non-optional property, Swift data is going to explode when the application is beginning because it loads in the schema and then it tries to map everything over. So something to just be wary about. If you're going to be adding new properties, just make sure you set them to optional, or you make it to where there's a migration plan. But at that point, that's where the schema comes in. So in this case, we only have one schema, which is really not really a schema. I mean, it's a schema, but you know, it's just us throwing things inside of the main schema. But the ideal way is to create a version 1 schema or version 2 schema and then having migrations such that everything maps over just fine. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Like I said, this navigation stack, this view is going to be tabbed. So this nav stack is going to be pulled up into the tab. So yeah, into the tab view. So this would be able to go ahead and be deleted, but you know, one thing at a time. All right, severity, add reaction. Let me go ahead and expand this. If I can, there we go. And if you're wondering, let's go ahead and head to Xcode. So this is what? The allergy editor sheet. So if we were to go, these do appear in Xcode, but honestly, I mean, while it's not bad here, it's a lot easier seeing the changes within Claude or within Codex too. That's what I like about it. You know, just using it as like using it as a pair programming session is how I like to do this. Brings back the good old days. All right, so let's see. Reaction draft. Okay, so it's a draft. That's fine. Make it so that way we are not mutating the live thing and just keeping it to here. Okay. I do want to eventually move these out into a view model. So there's a lot of code in here, but for now, I am accepting this. But what I do want to do is move this out into a view model and have that have it where the view model is referenced within these sheets and views just to keep the code minimal and not so noisy, because right now this view is just beginning, so I'm not too concerned. But eventually, when we get more, when this develops more, as the application develops more, or when it's getting large, like we're approaching that point, honestly, once we hit about 250 lines, I'm j- whether it's 250 lines or even if at the very end, I'm going to have Claude enforce a view model pattern. So let me go ahead and switch this over to Sonnet 4.6. Okay, so editing allergy alert. Okay, there's the alert. It's presenting, button delete, cancel, auto context delete allergy. Okay. Button editing label. Okay, it's the label. Text allergy severity. Okay, the severity. Then there's the reaction list. Okay, going ahead and sorting things out. And there's the reaction chip. Okay. Flow layout. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay. These I hated doing. Doing all these type of maths. In regards to like I love math, but when it comes to user interfaces, like I said, if I said it earlier, it's like user user interface development is not my thing. It's like I always prefer to just be on the back end. So back end or developing tools. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch over to Xcode and go ahead and run this. Actually, let's not really just do that here. Let's go ahead and pivot over to the simulator. Oh, did the simulator crash? Okay, no, never mind. Okay. And if you're wondering why I'm just like a little slow, also like I'm just learning how to use OBS Studio, so a lot of it is me learning to trust, did I really switch over to the right view? So, or to the right scene. So not only am I trying to get my terminology down, but I'm also trying to figure out if I'm really doing it right. Okay, so let's go ahead and do pollen. Severity moderate. Let's go ahead and say, huh. Yeah, okay, this is fine. So, so let's go ahead and I think I'd want this to be orange though. That's actually, okay, never mind, that's perfect. Can I break this? Perfect. Okay. Sneezing. Wheezing. And let's say congestion. And let's say that wheezing is inactive. Okay. That's not bad. I think what I would want is, okay, so there's the detail panel. I can't, oh, actually, no, that's the edit. Okay, so the way I would want this to be is tapping is going to open the details, making it to where all of these um, editable fields are hidden, and then where save is, I probably would want it to be edit. Yeah, I probably want edit to be up here, and then when you tap, actually, no. I think what I would do is I would probably not open this as a sheet for the detail. And the reason why is because I've been burned far too many times where a sheet cannot open up within a sheet. It could. Sometimes it works fine, but you're almost playing with fire because if you have a sheet, and then you open up a sheet inside of it, it can collapse both of those sheets. And it makes for a very odd experience. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do is make it to where this opens up as a push navigation. And then from there, we'll go ahead and have it to where the edit is on the top right corner. Probably just like a pencil icon. Yeah, pencil and box icon. And then what we'll do is that'll open up the sheet just like this. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and wind us back to Claude. Let me go ahead and just like see if, yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and wind this back to Claude. And what I'm going to say is some notes. Awesome. Some notes. Some notes. Let's see. For the detail view, can we make it a push navigation and the edit a stack within that? Right now, the edit isn't bad, but the user may accidentally interact with the fields without meaning to. The push stack prevent, no, the push, yeah. The push, the nav push, the navigation push prevents a double stack, a double sheet collapse. All right, was there anything else? Yeah, I know what I want to do here. Let's see. For the, actually here, let me do this. On the allergy, let's do on allergies. Allergies for the, how do I do this? For the severity, actually, now that I think about it, I guess, what do you think? You know, again, this is going to be open source, so you can modify it at will, but huh. Let me see. Let me move it to the right. The severity, can we move it to the, yeah, let's go ahead and, yeah, did I switch it? Let me just make sure it switches over. Okay, yeah, it's switching. Just learning how to trust my shortcuts for recording. Okay, for the severity, can we move the severity to the same level as the name? Actually, I feel like that's gonna bite me in the butt because I'm like, could the allergy be so long? Yeah, could the allergy be so long? Yeah, let's just keep it here. Yeah, let's just keep it there. Never mind. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Medicaid. Actually, hang on, let's do this. What happened was the application crashed before because it was when I was deleting, yeah, when I was deleting these allergies, it was something happened on one of the inverse relationships. So let me go ahead and just create one anaphylactic. And let's go ahead and delete. This should be, that trash should be an alert. Like, let's see. I feel like the color is overriding it, that's why. I feel like, yeah, let's go ahead. Where is the delete? Let's go ahead and head back into Claude real quick. Actually, no. Let's do this. Let's go to Xcode. Yeah, let's go to the allergy editor. Actually, let's just go back to Claude because it's a lot easier to just like hunt down for it. There, see the alert. The button is destructive, so this should be coming up as red. However, the application theme is overriding the red. Let's see. So the destructive for the delete is being overridden by the app theme. Can we override that color with the danger color or destructive color? Okay. So let's go ahead and now pivot back into here. Oh, tap gesture. Okay. Can I do add medication? Okay. All right, so let's say, I don't know, Tylenol dosage. I don't even know. It's been a while since I took Tylenol. 200 milligrams. That sounds kind of weak, maybe. Just imagine something here. All right, so once daily. I don't like this. I mean, what I mean by that is, like, take a look at this. How often are you going to say, I'm going to take my medication at 7, let me see, 7:33 in the morning? I think, oh man, so, okay, so let's see. On medications, can we create a custom date time picker that sets the time increments? Yeah, let's do 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Did I switch over for that? If not, I apologize. Let me go ahead and just like bring you back to here. So yeah, it's like, yeah, just setting up this asking right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. Once daily, let's say once daily. 4 times daily. Wow, 4 times daily. I'm actually, okay, so let's do this. Let's set this to 7:30. Wow, come on. 7:30. Start date is now. And let's say that I am to take this for 1 week. So the 24th of May. Add. Okay, Talon. That's not bad. I'm actually curious. Well, that's fine. Let's do Tylenol again. 200 milligrams. What does twice daily look like? Oh, okay. Let's say I'm going to take this at. It's the thing with the simulator. It's like, it's not bad, but you know, when you're using a mouse or when you're using your pointer, it's a lot difficult. You know, like it's more sensitive. 7:45, and then the second dose, 2,200 hours. Active. Yeah, let's just say twice daily. Yeah, that's fine. All right, let's do Tylenol again. 200 milligrams. Thrice daily. Okay, I think we get the gist, but let's go ahead and test it out. Let's go ahead and do 5:59 and let this be at 15:59. For this, I'm not planning on doing too much validation because I trust people know when their dosages are going to be. I'm not going to be a stickler and say, hey, it's like your times are overlapping. It's like, people are going to know their dosage times. Okay. I feel like, I feel like this is going to creep over, but I feel like that's okay. Let's keep it on the most extreme case. Let's make it to where the times are 4 like this. They're all at the 2300 hour. I just want to see what it looks like. Okay, so it's still keeping it in line. I feel like one more push would definitely move that off the edge. That's not how you say it, Tylenol. 200 milligrams. Okay, we did that, every X hours. Ooh, okay. I almost want to say that this 5 should be orange for the every X hours. Can we make it in the editor, in the new medication workflow? The hour is orange, so every X hours would have X in orange. And I'm actually curious. I keep forgetting to switch over, but I'll be more prudent with this. I just asked if Claude can go ahead and just create it every X hours, every hour. Okay, and this needs to be fixed. All right, now let me go ahead and actually switch over to Claude. Okay. On the 1 hour mark, can we switch the text to every hour? Yeah, every hour. Sure. Actually, no. I mean, I feel like we can make it every hour, but I feel like it breaks the consistency. I'm trying to think. Every 1 hour. Every hour. The only thing that's giving me pause here is do I want the. Because if we do every 1 hour, then one can be orange. But if we do every hour, which honestly is more preferred, then the whole thing would be orange. Hmm. Or, man. Maybe if this is better, or every 1 hour, every hour, hourly, or not sure how the text would. Hmm. Okay, so let's go ahead and pivot back. Right, am I switching? Let me see. Okay. Again, if you're wondering why I'm having like these long pauses, it's because I'm just going back to OBS Studio, like, not OBS Studio, but just like YouTube, like, downing my sanity. Okay. So let's go ahead and add that. Man, I realize we gotta clean all this up. Let's go ahead and just delete. Actually, no. I should have. Okay, let me go ahead and backtrack a little. 3x hours. Let's just do every 2 hours. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test weekly. Ooh. Okay. Weekly at a given time. Ooh, this is tricky. And why is this tricky? Because I'm almost thinking, let me do this. If we set this to 10, can I leave? Perfect. Actually, wait. Oh, no, I can leave. Okay. 200 milligrams. Because the problem is if you're going to set it weekly, then obviously, when is it beginning? So, let's see. For the weekly option, the dates are required for when, or how does one know when it begins and ends? Yeah, I don't know. You tell me if that sounds logical. Because if you're going to do it, I just want to know if it begins or ends. I'm also wondering if the dates themselves actually. Yeah, never mind. What I was, oh, let me switch back. So it's like, here's what I was typing. For the weekly option, are the dates required? For how does one know when it begins and ends? Another thing I was thinking of was, should we make it to where there is a custom date picker such that it shows it weekly? But when you think about it, even if they take it weekly, it's like I know that there may be or there are many times when a user is going to end it not on the week, the actual 7 day mark of it. So it's not so just keeping it open ended. So let's go ahead and pivot back to the simulator. Okay, so let's say it ends on, see, like in this case, it's like I need to take this weekly, but it's like I'm beginning on a Sunday, but I'm going to end on the 17th of June, which is Wednesday. Yeah, and see, it's like I think this is fine weekly. I was gonna say, should the beginning and end date get there, but one thing at a time. I feel like that's okay. As needed. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm quite happy with this. Let me delete like a couple of these. Okay, so conditions. I don't know. What's a condition? I think this is fine, honestly. Emergency notes. Get help now. Okay. All right, let's go back to Claude and see on conditions. This is fine for now. All right, so just for reference, I am on Sonnet once more. Okay, so let's see. And if you're wondering like how long I'm going to be doing this, like I feel like in general I'm going to keep it to like an hour at most. I'm not a huge fan of letting AI just do everything. Like obviously as you're seeing, AI is driving. No, AI is driving the implementation, but I'm steering its direction. So in general, this is how I've always programmed even in the real world when I was working for others. So In this case, it's not really much different. I will say it, it's definitely not as, it's not the same, but, at least it's a lot easier to reason about, a lot easier to coordinate. So, but in general, I'm going to keep this generally under an hour. So these projects are going to take a while. I debated this is still showing on Claude, yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. So I did debate just doing pre-recorded videos, but honestly it's like I just want to see the growth. I just want to see my own thinking process and how I change down the line. So these videos are going to be highly flawed. I'm sure that as things go on, things will improve, things will flow better. I'll actually plan better. So I'm sure things during this time, and I say this fondly, are going to look so interesting and, so imperfect in hindsight. But, that's life, isn't it? It's like we grow. And then it's like, it's nice to, take a look back at these things when it's highly imperfect and, just be like, wow. Even something as simple as these scrolls, like, me just doing all these mouse movements. It's going to be so interesting to just, see the passive nervousness in here, many moons later. All right, so let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Okay, so. Oh, and so another thing too is this is not primarily a medical application to begin with, but it's incidentally medical. But another thing I am doing is thinking of another medical application to work alongside. That's also going to be open sourced. So, the gist is when all of this is done, it's like I'll go ahead and just like put the GitHub link in the videos so that way, people can go ahead and take a look at it. I do know some of these applications are going to be utilizing Firebase down the line, depending on what I'm doing. And again, those are going to be open source. So you're able to download those as well and, get working off of it. A lot of this is really just like a workshop and, charging is really just to like defend against abuse on the server. But, it's like the gist of this is just to make it, for my own enjoyment and, for other people to learn and for me to learn too. Especially as I'm working on like my own software business now. Like it's nice to take this as a means to learn in another direction without having to put as much brain power like I am doing in my other application. And that is using Claude, by the way. But I am using Opus, and it is a huge difference on those big applications. But on the next one, I am thinking of using Codex. Just so that way we can see how it performs. I think Codex is a lot faster. Okay, allergy edit. Yeah, I think it's a lot faster and it's a little bit more immediate, but again, we're going to be steering all of this. Okay, allergy edit. Am I missing? Okay, wait. Allergy edit view. Allergy edit view. Is it not here? My crazy allergy editor sheet. File form. Wait. No, allergy. Okay, allergy detail. Okay, there's the allergy detail view. Okay. All right, let's see. Oh, that's nice. Pretty nice and concise. Delete allergy. Okay. Allergy edit view. Okay. Bindable allergy. I want that. So this is bothering me because this is going to edit the live allergy itself. And I want to separate mutation from intent because I don't want it to be where the user is entering information, they change their mind and they click cancel, but then it's like information is being mutated. I don't like that. So can we make this a draft? Let's see, for edits, we'll follow a draft pattern so that live data is not mutated without the user's explicit intent. Okay, so that's good. Go ahead and run that Xcode build. I feel like for the most part, regardless of the models, they do a pretty good job. Like I said earlier, Swift data is just finicky when it comes to relationships and doing vertical expansion on entities. And vertical expansion just means you're adding new types. No, you're adding new properties onto existing types. So let me see if I can go find one here. So if you scroll to the top, yeah, like see here, these, if you were to suddenly add like a new property, or even if you were to edit any of these existing properties, that is a danger zone for Swift data, especially if it's a non-nil property. So like in the case of, if I was to say like var, let's say I was to say var, what is this, an allergy? Let's just say I created a variable like var item, just something random, and you made it a string, a non-optional string. So this would be a pretty bad addition. Not bad, but it's like what would happen is because the data is required, it's going to make Swift data explode. So when you're adding new properties, you would have to either A, make it optional so that way it can give it a default value of nil, or make it to where in the schema you have it where there is a migration such that it knows how to backfill data. And we'll get to there down the line. For now, I'm just working on these things slowly because there are so many things to enforce. I want to get the view model pattern in here as well. So, one thing at a time. So let's see. Yeah, can we make that explicit? Okay. Func. Yeah, and then see what's going to happen here is in this save, that is where we're going to bind things over. But I want it to be, well, like again, we'll see. It's like, I think this should be a draft pattern. I do not want to mutate live data. So future me or anyone else, if you see that bindable and it's not what I think it is, it's not the live data, like, do let me know. This guy is, well, okay. If we do the draft pattern for the editor, does this need to be bindable still? If this is where we'll intercept the edit draft, then that's fine. Commit. And see these bindings. Oh. Okay. So let's go ahead and give this over and let's go ahead and see what I keep hitting my elbow on the desk. Let's go ahead and see what Claude thinks of this. Swift is such a neat language. You know, it is you for those who don't know, it is used beyond just iOS. You know, like it's used beyond the Apple ecosystem, but the problem is you must be I think it's on Linux. It's been a long, long time since I took a look at that, but I know that beyond the Apple ecosystem, it is used on the server. So like there is a framework called Vapor. I have not tried Vapor yet. It looks interesting, but my projects typically drift towards Golang. But no, Swift itself is not a bad language. The main reason I didn't pull the trigger on my own business using Vapor is just because Golang has a lot more industry support and it's a larger community versus Swift Vapor. And beyond the beyond Apple because it's their own language that they made like it's the community is not as large. But again, it doesn't mean maybe what I'll do is one of these open source projects in the workshop, what I'll do is we'll make it with Vapor. Yeah, we'll probably make some API because I'm not going to constrict myself to just mobile applications. I am open to switching over to Android and doing an Android equivalent of these apps, or even maybe like like an application that's like native to Android. The reason I don't like to use Flutter now, I know there is cross-platform such as React Native and Flutter, but I'm kind of a stickler about just working within the platforms because like again, you do get the benefit of one code base, two platforms, but I'm not a huge fan of JavaScript on the I'm not a huge fan of React to be precise. And Flutter is not bad, but at the end of the day, I don't like splitting my mindset at the widget implementation level because the way it typically works is you have like your common widgets and then you're basically developing iOS widgets using Cupertino widgets alongside material widgets. Material widgets render fine. I'm not concerned with that. But with the introduction and the advent, well, with the advent of iOS 26, the user interface is drastically different from iOS 18, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So it doesn't, that disparity is what made me stop using Flutter. Let me see. It's entirely unstable, bindables, and then would be misleading and playing. Let's see. To all edit sheets. Add that to, let's see, to the doc as well. Inefficient in the short term, but it makes it predictable in the long term. Okay, but yeah, it's just kind of my gist. I'm actually curious to see if they have a templating language though, because I will say the huge advantage, regardless, that's one of the other reasons too. It's like, regardless of whether it's cross platform or native, the thing that makes them nice today, at least, is the languages are unified. What do I mean by that? Like, here, let's go ahead and pivot over to Xcode, but it doesn't take too long. It's like, let's see, did I switch over? Let me just, if you're seeing a little pause, again, it's just because I'm, okay, yeah. So see, here's like the editor sheet. This is all in Swift. So it's nice for the user interface to be interacting with the back end well, not a backend, but it's interesting for the user interface and the code base to be in Swift. Same for Jetpack Compose. It's in Kotlin, so that's really nice. The I prefer to have that uniformity when it comes to the stack, because I understand why the front end and back end exists, but as a solo developer, to be honest, it's like, yeah, as a solo developer, it's like having that uniformity is a lifesaver. Yeah, 7 years though. It's like 7 years I was doing software development, but I can get into a lot. There's a lot to talk about there, but 7 years. It's a fun field, but it's definitely not something I can see myself doing forever because, sure, a lot of people just kind of get tired of the way, the bureaucracy and just the nature of the work. I don't know. I personally am just tired of it. I'd rather just do it for myself. Okay. Perfect. A lot of changes done. Well, I think, let me just go ahead and validate that this is fine. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and call it here. We're basically at the hour mark, so I don't want to go on too long. So let me just go ahead and see what this looks like here. All right, so yeah, everything looks good. Okay, so let's go ahead and call it here. Um, yeah, as I'm figuring things out, just one thing at a time. So, all right, see how we grow down the line. And most importantly, I'm curious to see how I grow. I'm excited for these things. So, with that, we'll go ahead and call it here. And thanks for watching.